Way back on December 18th, 2025, the President of the United States of America issued an executive order directing the Department of Justice to complete the rescheduling process of marijuana from Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 drug of the Controlled Substance Act. Every time something with marijuana scheduling happens, we get a lot of questions, and we're here today to talk all about it.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
What's good out there, Liquid Trucking, and welcome into the Liquid Trucking Podcast, episode 112 for your ear holes. I'm your host, Marcus. Thank you so much for being here today. We got a real whiz-bang of an episode, if I do say so myself. We are going to be talking about the Clearinghouse. We're going to be talking about cannabis reform, right? And this is one of those things that every time something happens in the news around cannabis, marijuana, weed, ganja, whatever you want to call it, the grass, we get a lot of questions coming in. We get people that are curious, hey, is this going to change things for me? No, is the short answer, but I wanted to bring in an expert today, and so a little bit later on in the program, Jesse Keebler is going to join us, and Jesse has been processing background checks and drug checks and screens like that since 2004. The dude's got so much experience in it. He's very well versed in what the Clearinghouse is, how it works, and some statistics that might just blow your mind about it. So make sure to stay tuned because that interview's coming up just around the corner, as I said. And later on in the show, and I've done this to you a couple of times lately, but I have a very big announcement. Somebody is going to be joining me later in the show. That somebody is a very important person for you to meet. So you got to stick around to the end. We're gonna give you all the information first. We're gonna put that fire hose up to your mouth and turn it on full blast so that you get all the information about the new marijuana scheduling that President Trump sent down the pike on, I think it was December 18th. We're going to get you all the information about the Clearinghouse that you might not know, how it works, what to do, what not to do. And we're just going to have a general conversation about this. And then we're going to turn the corner and I'm going to blow your mind. Well, not really. It's not like I don't have Michael Jordan coming to interview with me or anything like that. But I do have a very special guest, somebody that I'm very excited for you to meet. So make sure you stay tuned. Listen to this whole episode. This is our soup to nuts episode on the Clearinghouse, and I would say it's a good episode for you to go soup to nuts on. Never really understood that turn of phrase, soup to nuts. I'm sure somebody can tell me where the origins is. It's like, well, back in the Old West in the 1800s, they used to have soup and then nuts, and they'd talk about everything that happened in their day in between, and that's soup to nuts. If that's the case, great. I don't know. I just like the term soup to nuts. I feel like it really is all-encompassing. If I was to look at somebody and say, hey, get your shit together, and that person grabbed all their soup and all of their nuts, I guess they got it together, right? This is the second podcast in a row that's had some kind of weird tangent of mine off the top, so apologies, or not really, because that's kind of what I do. Homework time. Something else we got to talk about off the top of every episode, podcast.liquidtrucking.com, the website where you need to go to learn all the things that you can learn about this podcast, who we're having on, what we're talking about, and any picture galleries or anything like that that we ask you drivers to take part in, we'll share those up there too. So make sure to spend some time over at podcast.liquidtrucking.com. You know, there's between 1,500 and 2,000 of you every week that listen to this show. We greatly appreciate every single one of you for clicking that download and listen button. But I have to assume that since Liquid's only got 180, 200 drivers somewhere in that neck of the woods, a lot of you guys are driving for other companies right now and thinking about how nice it would be to come work for such a great company like Liquid. Well, it's pretty simple. I'm going to give you a ton of information on this podcast every single week that can help you learn about Liquid Trucking, but their website is right there attached to where ours is, liquidtrucking.com. Head on over there. There's a ton of information. You can chat with them right there at the website if you've got some questions. We know you're listening. We know you're curious. We know you're thinking about it. So you might as well give the boys over at the recruiting crew a call. And or text or chat, a web chat, whatever it may be. Jake's not intimidating. You've heard him on this podcast before. He ain't gonna bite you. Heck of a nice guy. Talk to him about hockey. You can be on the phone with him for hours. So liquidtrucking.com and podcast.liquidtrucking.com, two very important websites for you to find yourself at this Wednesday, or any Wednesday or Tuesday, Monday. Hell, I don't care what day of the week you go there. Just go. Also, podcast at liquidtrucking.com. I really haven't gotten too many emails from you guys lately. I've gotten a couple. They've been cool. It's always great to hear from a new driver, but I would really like some feedback from you guys. What do you want to hear? That's the important part. That's the biggest question I have for you. What can we put on this podcast that's really going to resonate with you? And the reason I say with you, not with all of you drivers, is because, hey, maybe it's a little bit of a niche topic. Maybe you want to talk about something, we've had Michael Donut Duncan on here talking about tabletop RPGs, okay? We've had guys from the shop talk about their gambling YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of stuff to talk about on this podcast. So I want to take a moment to remind you that no matter how niche, no matter how special interest, if you want to talk about something on this show, you bring it to me, and I'll tell you right now, I'll make it into an episode if I can. In fact, challenge me, try me, give me a subject that you don't think I can turn into an episode, and I'll do it. And bonus on top of that, if you suggest it, and it's a really tough one, and I make it into an episode, you're going to get Drive for Gold points anyway. It's that simple. Any suggestion that comes into the show nets you Drive for Gold points if we can turn it into an episode. And for those of you that have never been on the show before, you'll also get broken off a chunk of Drive for Gold points just for coming on the very first time. And we can talk about anything. So make sure to send me an email, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. Or if you've got my cell phone number, or one of these drivers that you hear on the show all the time, get my number from them. You can call or text me right there. It's real simple to get a hold of me, and I am always open to hearing all of your guys' ideas. All right, that's enough homework. That's enough setup. That's enough of the boring stuff. It's time to get to the meat, the real juicy part of today's episode. Jesse Keebler joining me right around the corner. Welcome back into the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Excited to have my next guest join me here today. We've got Jesse Keebler from Liquid Trucking checking in. Jesse, thanks for being here, man. It's an important conversation we're about to have today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, the reason I wanted to get you in here is because obviously when cannabis scheduling hits the news, Jesse, we get a lot of questions coming in. I get drivers asking me questions. And this, I live in a state where cannabis is legal, so I inherently hear a lot of these questions just kind of being flung around in the ecosystem where I live. But I think really maybe starting with the executive order and moving through and just talking about all the things we have to talk about today. We're going to bring you guys so much information, but we should probably just set the table real quick, Jesse, by delivering that executive order. So did you have that on hand for you, or you want me to read it? I've got it right here as well.
I got it right here too. So, on December 18th, 2025, the President of the United States issued an executive order directing the Department of Justice to complete the rescheduling process of marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 drug of the Controlled Substance Act. There's been a lot of inquiries about what impact this will have on the Department of Transportation's law and regulation about the use of marijuana by safety-sensitive transportation employees, pilots, school bus drivers, truck drivers, train engineers, subway operators, aircraft maintenance personnel, transit firearm security personnel, ship captains, and pipeline emergency response personnel, among others. That's a pretty long list when you really start thinking about who potentially this all affects. First,
Right.
Marijuana is still a Schedule 1 drug under the CSA. Until any rescheduling is complete, it remains unacceptable for any safety-sensitive employee subject to drug testing under the Department of Transportation's drug testing regulations to use marijuana. Second, until the rescheduling process is complete, the DOT's drug testing processes and regulations will not change. Transportation employees in safety-sensitive positions will still be subject to testing for marijuana. Furthermore, the department's guidance on medical and recreational marijuana and CBD are still in effect. Labs, MROs, medical review officers, and substance abuse professionals, which are also called SAPs, must continue to follow 49 CFR Part 40. There's no changes to their roles or responsibilities as they relate to marijuana. So, this was a article that was put out by the transportation.gov, the U.S. Department of Transportation. They're going to continue to monitor the rescheduling and update the transportation industry as appropriate. So, at this time, everything is as status quo. Still
right.
You just because, like you said, Oregon has it, or hey, Colorado's right next to Nebraska. I'm on a vacation to Colorado. I can go buy a joint. I can smoke it because hey, it's legal. But the fact is, I have a CDL. I get pulled in for my random pool. I have a pre-employment drug test with an employer to drive. Whatever it is, you're in compliance, and that's where it hits this clearinghouse that we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to mention, safety sensitive transportation employees, I guess we'd call them that, but really for our intents and purposes, we're just talking about drivers here. But it's good to be curious, right? It's good to ask these questions before you just act, because if you just act, you might end up finding out more about the clearinghouse, which we're going to tell you about here in just a little bit and talk about some of the stats and figures that Jesse's brought to us today. But the one thing I want to remind drivers, before we came on the air, I was telling Jesse that our most listened to episode of all time is the first episode that we did on cannabis and truck driving. And I don't know why. I don't think we gave any particularly, mind-bending facts, or we didn't really talk about anything that wasn't available information that you could go and you could get if you look for it. But something that was similar back then that's also happening now is this isn't the first time we've seen an executive order say this, Jesse. Going all the way back to when I actually worked in the cannabis industry, all the way back in the late Obama administration days, we had similar things come out of the office of the president saying, I'm directing the attorney general to do this. And since then, and all the way up until now in 2025, anytime a president, which includes Joe Biden, and I'm not sure if Donald Trump did it during his first sitting as president, but Obama, Biden, and Trump now have all directed the attorney general to assess the scheduling of marijuana, and they have not done a thing about it. So saying that we're at status quo right now is very important, but keep in mind, you might turn around in a year from now and still be at status quo. There's a lot that has to happen, but at this point in time, they haven't even turned over the second rock yet. This is kind of the first rock. The president points a finger and says, do it. Now we've got a whole train of people that have to act, and so far, I mean, we're almost a month away from this at this point in time. By the time this episode's air, it will be over a month, and nothing has happened yet, Jesse.
Yeah, and I don't expect anything to happen, honestly. I mean, there's so many other issues going on. I mean, we're having, not to get off topic of this, but you look at even the medical card for drivers carrying that. We still have 8 states that are not following the state guide, the federal guidelines yet, where they're getting it all on there that it just got extended till April. They're telling drivers now to carry their med cards till April. They gave an extension on that. And that's been in the pipeline for a long time. We know how long that's taken, and it's caused challenges, and it's made employers, us one of them, hey, I could call you up and have you go take your DOT physical probably a week before, 3 days before. I could email the state of Nebraska and it would be fine. Your MVR would be updated. Now you're looking at guys that, if it's got to go through the Federal Register, to their group there, and then it's got to go to the state, it's making employers look at, do we need to start doing this 30 days early, 2 weeks early? Like, what's an acceptable time? So again, like same thing with this, like it's going to be a little bit of, like you said, we've had multiple presidents that have put it out there, but then it's the follow through. What are they going to do? Because, when you look at this, it starts affecting some regulations out there and how things are done.
Yep, it really does. And then when you get to that point, all of a sudden the almighty dollar creeps its way into the discussion. And with the glacial pace that political change moves at, as well as the dollar kind of governing who jumps and how high, don't expect any change on this for a significant amount of time if you ever see it. And I think we might be safe in saying here, even if this does change, Jesse, and they go, okay, it's no longer Schedule 1, It's Schedule 3, rubber stamped and approved. I'm still kind of sitting here thinking nothing changes for safety sensitive employees like truck drivers. Do you anticipate any change if they do actually push this all the way through, or is things going to stay pretty much the same for the way drivers have to refrain?
I anticipate it staying the same. I mean, I don't know how they could. I understand they could change it there, but these guys are considered professionals, and I think that's always a challenge that, sometimes drivers, there are those higher expectations because they're a commercial driver, so I do believe it's going to stay that way. Just as we went through that list and I look back at it, we're talking about pilots. Do you want your pilot in a plane? He could have smoked marijuana right before it, as he's getting on there. And I think I'm not young, I'm an older gentleman, and as my kids like to tell me now, but the days of when I went to high school and college, how it's changed, the stuff is so much more potent. And like you said, you probably worked in it. I'm sure you probably saw the stuff that's created now so little. You can use very little now to get an effect of what it took a lot of in the past to get there.
Yeah.
So,
yep. I think there's a comedian out there that talks about it, and he says for the last 10 years they've been working on it like it's the cure to cancer. And there's some people that are convinced that it is, but that being said, there's been a lot of research and R&D that's gone into, like Jesse's saying, making it more potent, making it something that maybe back when you were in college, you try a little corner of that brownie, because why not? Man, if you bought that thing at a legal dispensary, you better do a lot of research before you ever take a bite of it, because it'll send you to the moon. Okay. Yep. And it's, part of that is, look, I'm right there with you. I'm a person who advocates for the legalization of it, but that comes from my experience in seeing what it did for a lot of people. I had a lady that was going to acupuncture 4 times a week just so she could walk, Jesse. And through the use of some topical ointments and some tinctures, 3 months later, she was coming into my shop and she was not even using her cane. She had bounce in her step. Yep. I think there's good positive things here. I don't think that is ever going to mix with truck driving, in my personal opinion, which I've said it on this show so many times. My opinion and 50 cents won't buy you a cold cup of coffee, let alone a hot one. But really, I think when we have the discussion of, is this something we want the truck drivers on our American highways to be accessing, possibly even right before or while they're driving, I think the answer is a resounding no all the way across the board.
Agreed.
So let's talk a little bit about the Clearinghouse and what happens once you get either a failed test, a refused test, and there's other ways that we can get into this, and Jesse's going to bring this kind of to the table here and clarify it for us, because we did have a driver, as I mentioned earlier, reach out and say, hey, I would kind of like to know more about this. I'm not worried that I'm going to end up in it, but I don't know anything about it, and I would like to know what the process is. We're going to hook that driver up with some Drive for Gold points for suggesting this episode to us, because it's always a good thing to talk about. But tell me about the Clearinghouse. Let's put it this way. I'm a driver. I've just failed a test for cannabis, marijuana, weed, the ganj, whatever you want to call it. What happens next, Jesse?
If you don't mind, Marcus, I'd like to we can hop into that, but I kind of like bring up why it started in the first place. If I can start there kind of with the Clearinghouse. Of course. I've been doing reference checks for DOT since 2004. Let's just say, I've been doing that for a couple of years. In the past, if I'm hiring you, I send off to trucking company ABC, hey, I want to hire Marcus Bridges. Does he have any drug and alcohol violations? You know what? Maybe you were fired because, again, you had a positive random test with them. And you know what? They don't really, they're supposed to report that to me, but they don't necessarily have to, because do they want that reputation of having somebody that was there? I think kind of at the times, that was back when fax was around doing that type of stuff. It maybe got lost. We as employers make good faith efforts to get those reports, but at the same time, you could just start documenting we never got it, and an employer could say, hey, I sent that to you, and you'd be like, well, I never got it, So there was a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, I don't want to stereotype it, put it out there, but I think there wasn't, the information was inconsistent,
Sure.
So you maybe
there were
have
ways
guys,
to kind of maybe get
around the
around
system.
certain things.
It's no different than what used to be. You could have multiple licenses in states.
Right.
I'm old enough to remember people having multiple licenses. You know, so that's why we have the CDLIS now on pre-employment checks. So to verify
Right.
there's only one license. So this was created. It was talked about for a long time, and it finally went into effect September of 2019. So basically, what it is it's a secure real-time online database for commercial drivers or anybody that's going to go through a trucking school, get a learner's permit, has passed that. They're registered. That tracks drug and alcohol violations, so tests, refusals, return to duty process, which we'll talk about, where you talk about having that positive test, letting employers, the FMCSA. It tracks prohibitions to enhance safety and ensure drivers, complete that return to duty process before driving. Employers have to run annual pre-hire inquiries, and it states that if there's had their licenses downgraded. So there's that type of stuff. So to go into, all right, hey, I went in. There's a couple ways that a test is going to get reported to here. So hey, I let you know, Marcus, hey, you're up for a random test, and you tell me, hey, I'm not going to go take it. That's a refusal to test. We have to document that. We submit that information into the clearinghouse as the employer, or you go in for that test and we get the negative result or the positive result back, then we have to report that to the clearinghouse. So we, as the employer, submit that information in there. We give that employee the options of, hey, you can go see a substance abuse professional. We also notate, tell the employee this has to be reported to the clearinghouse. So that is the responsibility of the employer to do that. So we report that, then they go into, if they have a positive test in the system, either from a refusal, a positive drug test, then they are put in a prohibited driver status in the federal database at that time. So, and then, we can mark the steps along that, hey, they're going into return to duty, and then we get into if they're going to continue to be a commercial motor vehicle driver, then they go through that return to duty process.
Okay. So am I correct in saying that before the clearinghouse was a thing, that trucking fleets just depended on prior employment to be able to figure out if somebody had been popped for alcohol or drug offenses while behind the wheel or just while driving?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. So this is, listen, it might be for those of you trying to get by the system and do the drugs and drink and not get tested and not have a failed test. Those were the days you wanted to be driving. Nowadays, this is good, right? This is getting everything all in one place. It's getting records kept and referenced. And this has got to make the job of hiring somebody a lot easier when it comes to knowing what they've been messed up in the past, right, Jesse?
Yep. Yeah, it does. And, I can tell you as it's evolved year after year, as a driver before, and I think as drivers change fleets, it gets easier and easier to go in and do it because we have to, when they do a application for us, they consent to the clearinghouse. So then we basically push a request through to that driver, that future employee, that we're going to run this clearinghouse query. So that's done, and then we run an annual. So if something did pop in, or all of a sudden you may have an employer that wasn't reporting something, or MRO that wasn't, all of a sudden it's in there, or gosh forbid we reported something and we kept using them, then we have that documentation along the way. But so yeah, I can tell you from 4 or 5 years ago, you might run across, some drivers that say, I don't know how to do this, or they wouldn't want to go in and give you consent, or they would, slow play it or whatever, because it wasn't what they were used to. But I find most drivers now, it's pretty easy. They've been exposed to it. They go in and do it pretty easily. And myself, I actually have 2 accounts. I have an employer account, and I still have my personal account because I still have a valid CDL. So, if I was to do it, I still have to go in. If I was to apply somewhere that I'm going to drive, I still have to approve that myself.
And chances of you getting back on the road right now, Jesse?
It's probably as good as Dylan Raiola coming back to Nebraska.
Oh man, that one that cuts a little deep, especially today. But I get it, man, and I understand too. I totally do. So you brought us a bunch of numbers here, actually, straight up from the U.S. Department of Transportation, FMCSA, clearinghouse numbers that we have here. This is from the November 2025 monthly summary report, and I just want you to pick out some of the stuff here that you find the most interesting, Jesse, because there's a lot of information here, and some of it's a little eye-popping, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they come out every month. Like I said, they started their user role started in September 28th of 2019. So that's when all this information started populating in there. When you look at 2020, the first year of CDL, CLP holders and organization registration. So that could be when you start looking at MROs, drivers in there, companies that are pulling this. You look at 2021, there was 1.5 million holders and organization registrations that year. And you go to this current year, granted this was in November, so we're missing 1 month of 2025, but there was 800,000.
So you lost half, basically,
Yeah, when you
over that
start
time
thinking
period.
about drivers, employers, MROs, SAPs, we've lost half in the industry in what, 6 years?
6 years. That is
It's
crazy.
crazy numbers. Like, and this is just one side of it, right? So of the business. So it's pretty crazy. As they know, like I said, a single user may have multiple roles within it. Like myself, I'm in there multiple times, as an employer and as a user.
Mhm.
So to me, that's pretty interesting. Um, and I want to put it out there to any of our employees or anybody that wants this information. We're more than welcome to provide it to you. We get an email monthly from FMCSA giving us this information. It's always, when you get something month to month, it's tough to like look at a full overview. So I like to look when it's like the year has ended, your start date.
Mhm.
But when you look at the number of drivers, this is really kind of interesting too. So in 2020, so we had what, 1.5 million?
Yep.
In 2020, we had 1.4 million drivers, and in 2025, we had 727,000. Again,
What
that half.
what do you think is behind that, Jesse? Do you think that there are obviously there's multiple factors at play here to clear out half of the numbers, but are there larger factors that are clearing out bigger chunks of people? Is it the freight market? What is it that causes such a drastic shift over such a short period of time?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, it's pretty crazy. I mean, you went from 2020 to 2021. Now I'm just looking at that. I would have to go kind of look into it, like how many drivers do we lose due to positive drug tests during that time frame, or drug or alcohol offenses? But it's an aging market of drivers
Yeah,
out there.
good point.
And as people are looking to get into the industry, the and we are unique. Everybody's unique. They say their company's unique. We have weekly routes. We have twice out, 3 times a week. When you really think about over the road, what it used to be, guys used to stay out 2 to 3 months at a time, and I don't think there's not a lot of companies that do that. And you even looking at a lot of these companies, they've gone to having regional depots, so guys can be out of those locations, or they make it easier for them to transfer to stay. You maybe had a guy that grew up in Florida. All of a sudden, he's working in Seattle. And you know what? 10 years down the road, mom and dad are getting older. I can work for this big company out in Seattle. And when they have a driver position open up in Florida, I can work my way to get back. I can still stay with that company, but I can transition back to where I want to be.
Mhm.
So, that's one thing I think is factored in. And as we get through it and you kind of look at the numbers, you do have a lot of things. I mean, even it's a tough industry. Margins keep being smaller. You even look at just the owner operators from 2020. We had 54,000 owner operators, and we're down to 40,000. So that's 14,000 owner operators gone in basically 6 years. So the number of SAPs has gone down. That do it. You had 1,000 SAPs in 2019, or 2020, 1,500. Sorry, 1,500, and we're down to 670 SAPs in 2025. Substance abuse professionals to handle the guys that are out there, the people that are having this positive test. So it's just
Sure.
It's pretty crazy. You even look at the employers. We're starting when you're talking in 2020, we had 131,000, almost 132,000 employers that had accounts in Clearinghouse. We're down to 73,000.
Wow,
So
that's crazy.
it's the retirements. I think, the guys retired. I think drivers, it's people have gone away from the industry. We can obviously see the number of employers are down. So that really drives everything, for these, the MROs, the SAPs, when there's less need, there's just going to be less out there.
Sure, sure. And this time period we're looking at included the COVID boom and also the subsequent bust in the freight market as well, and lots of turnover and exiting the market. I mean, we saw it, we've talked about it here on the show. Even over the past year, we talked about how much capacity has been exiting the market recently. So all those things going to have an effect on it. Let's talk a little bit about violations reported here. We did discuss this the last time that we had this conversation, but these numbers are very interesting to me, and I always look at trends, right? When I look at your bar graphs that you sent, I'm looking at the way that it swoops. I'm trying to draw a line and figure out what's the trend here. And I'm down on the violations reported to Clearinghouse page here, looking at violations by year. Starting in 2020, we had 53,000. Now, remember what was going on in the world, 2020 to about 2022. 58,000 in 2021, 68,000 in 2022, 68,000 in 2023, down to 62 in 2024, down significantly again in 2025 to 53,000. What does that tell you in your position, Jesse? You see these numbers kind of swoop up and then come back down. As far as violations are concerned, is that a societal thing? Is that where we were in the world causing those numbers to jump like that? What do you think?
I think they jumped, like you brought up at that time, and you start thinking about 2020, middle of 2020 to that time frame. You had basically from 2020 to 2021, businesses there, what was the communication like with the drivers? They were dealing with their, the mental health out on the road. So
Yep.
what were they doing for it? You know, um, this was also a new process. So, you start thinking about it, you had all these employers start really reporting stuff. MROs had to report stuff, where, going into it in 2019, it wasn't really in there,
Mm-hmm.
so it's all this stuff getting reported. And like you said, it's come down these last 3 years, but you also look at the number that we have lost from that were in the program from 2020 till now. You probably should have less positives,
Yeah.
right?
And maybe even a bigger or a smaller number than what we're showing there, based on
Yep.
losing half the people there.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so you were also talking to me before we got on the air a little bit about just the number of drivers in the clearinghouse, kind of, meta numbers there. Can we talk a little bit about that? How many drivers are dealing with something that has to do with the clearinghouse right now? Or
Yeah.
I guess in it would be the way to
Yeah, I
go.
think as we're talking about, they go through all drivers with at least one violation in the system. So yeah, we have guys that, people that have had violations, but maybe they've done the return to duty process. They'd come back. That's, 325,000, when you start looking at it. And we have, 727 active drivers in the system. So that's a third of the driving force has had at least a driver. And this is, again, and I'm not saying these are all active. That's at least one driver violation. So out of 325,000, right now we got 200,000 sitting in a prohibited status. So you got 125,000 out of our current 727,000 drivers in the system that, are have had a positive test and have gone through the return to duty process and that. So, and out of that 200,000 that we have out there, 157,000, almost 160 have not even started the return to duty process. So we've got, 160,000 drivers not on the road,
That's
not able to
crazy.
haul freight, not able to drive for companies. You got 2,000 that have had their SAP, their substance abuse professional request sent. We got 5,000, almost 6,000 that have had a designation confirmed. We got 1,200 that have declined requests. 10,000 where they've done the initial SAP. We got almost 24,000 that are eligible for return to duty. So we got 124,000 drivers that are in the non-prohibit status when you look at it. So it's pretty crazy numbers when you look at the whole industry, and it's crazy to think, where we were at, when I think about where I was at in 2020, 2004 when I started out in this industry, running driver qualification files, doing reference checks. It'd be crazy to look how many drivers there were back then and just kind of, if you take the percentages and think about it, how crazy that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And the ones that slipped through the cracks before all of this, all of these steps were taken, I think, that might make you have a long, dark, cold look in the mirror.
Yep,
unfortunately, but what could you do about it? And the answer is nothing.
Yep.
There's just a little bit more here, Jesse, that I wanted to get to real quick in terms of numbers before I've got a short little story to tell you, and then I'll let you get back to it. But since we kind of started this conversation talking about President Trump's order of the rescheduling of marijuana, I want to give you guys an idea of what drivers test positive for, because we do have those numbers sitting right here. And bearing in mind that there are a ton of drugs on this list, I think I'm looking at maybe 15 different drugs here, and they range from the hardest possible thing you could do all the way down to the softest possible thing you could do. But there is a significant difference in the amount of drivers that have tested positive for marijuana compared to the other drugs on the list. And I think that kind of encapsulates the entire reason that we're having this conversation. Yeah, the president's executive order kind of put it on our radar. The driver that called in and said, "Hey, talk to me about the Clearinghouse," kind of spurred us into it. But the fact of the matter is, if there's a problem drug in trucking, these numbers I have right in front of me, Jesse, would suggest that it is marijuana. Is that an accurate statement to make?
Yeah, when you look at it, pretty much year over year, 60% of the positive tests are marijuana.
There you go. Over half. And when you're talking about a list of 15 different substances, that's a significant chunk. So, guys, I think the lesson here today is just don't. It's not worth it. Don't, if you see something in a state that isn't legal yet, I see a lot of these states out here pumping this Delta 8 THC thing. Look, I understand it. It's in a lab. It's smarter than I am. But here's what I'll tell you. It ain't smarter than the drug test that you're going to get from your prospective employer or the random that you're going to get from your current employer. So don't fall for any cheap snake oil tricks that say this is going to do what you expect cannabis to do, but it's not cannabis. It's really just not worth it. We're talking about your career here, your livelihood. And with the numbers that Jesse just gave us of the Clearinghouse, you can see a gigantic portion of guys that end up with a positive test. They're just sitting there spinning their wheels. They're not making any money, and the process hasn't even started for them to get back to making money, Jesse. So that would be my advice, and I'm just a podcast host. Coming from your shoes, based on our whole conversation here, what advice would you give liquid drivers that are listening today about this whole thing?
I'm going to follow the same sentiment you said. Just don't do it. If you're questioning or thinking it, and unfortunately, in the 10 years of doing this job, I've had employees who've had positive tests, and they're like, "Well, I was on vacation," or like you said, brought up the brownie earlier. Early in my career, I had an employee test positive, and they were like, "I went to this party and ate a brownie, and everybody laughed because I had something in it." And I told them I can't do this. So it's really
Sucks.
challenging, and there's a lot of stuff out there. It's no different than an employee that goes in for the regular doctor and they get a prescription, and it's their responsibility to let that doctor know, "Hey, I'm a commercial motor vehicle driver. Is this prescription safe for me to drive?" That's why you got to notify your employer what prescriptions you got so we can check. If they're prescribing you narcotics, you can't be driving.
Yep.
It's those things that, we'd like to believe the common sense is out there, but sometimes, we know sense isn't common. So again, like you said, like these different, Delta 8s, these THCs, There's just so much stuff out there. Just, think before you do it, and then, it's so tough. You never know when somebody is going to be drawn for a random. You can have a guy that could be drawn for a random 3, 6 straight quarters, and you can have a guy. I've had employees that I've never drug tested because they just don't get drawn. That's random. We don't make that selection. We put them in, and a third party consortium figures the driver, pulls them. And like I said, you may have guys that get tested every month. I remember I think I was 20 years old. There's actually a federal database at that time. And I got pulled in on the summer to do drug tests before I went to college, so at least it was before I went to college.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, it's just think it over and don't is the best advice that we can give you here today. And I got a story because I have to ask you what you would have done in my manager's position here, okay? Because it's the only failed drug test story I have, Jesse. And I'll be honest with you, I think I would have passed the test. I didn't have anything in my system that I knew about. I hadn't had anybody, slip me a brownie at a party, as we said. But my entire life have been incredibly bladder shy. I do not like public bathrooms. We've talked about it on this show. I will put myself in physical pain to get back to my house to do my business here, okay? So it was the first time I'd ever taken a drug test. I think I was 19 or 20 years old. I was trying to get a job at a cell phone kiosk in the mall, which if you're going to let people do drugs, I'd say that's a job that you could probably get away with it. But I didn't know that he'd give me any instruction. And so I thought, well, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get to the clinic. I'm not going to be able to go. So I drank 60 ounces of water before I got in the car and drove over there. And I remember really having to go, like it was urgent. And a few days later, my new manager, I've only been working there for a week. He calls me over. He says, "Hey, come here for a second." He takes me over, by the food court, which is as private as you can get in a mall. And he says, "You got anything you want to tell me?" I said, "No." He goes, "Well, what's the deal with this inconclusive drug test?" I said, "What do you mean inconclusive?" And he goes, "The doctors told me there was so much water, man, they couldn't tell anything about what that was." He goes, "Now, in any other instance, that's a positive test for me. But because they told me yours was so diluted, I want to give you another chance here to be honest with me." And I told him exactly what I just told you. I can't pee in public. That's the only thing. What happens if you get a test that's too diluted or something like that? Has that ever happened to you before?
Yeah, there's every company has different, part of it is what organizations have set in their policies. Some companies, if you have a pre-employment, let's say it's a negative dilute, it's a pre-employment test, some policies will say, hey, if it's a pre-employment test, you got to go back in and test, retest. And their policy may say on a random negative dilute, that's fine. It's considered negative. So every company's kind of different. It's like you have to write your DOT drug and alcohol program and have that in there. That's not uncommon to have the dilute in there. Like you said, I've been doing the random game for a while. It used to be, hey, one of my companies I was at for a long time, I ran a random pool. So I would tell drivers, hey, come up and see me before you leave today. And they would come up and they're like, oh, I got a random. I'm like, no, I just wanted to say hi to you. And they're like, "Ah, you sucker," and then I would get them 2 weeks later because I had my random list, and they would say, "Come up and see me." So they come up, I'm like, "Oh yeah, here you go," and they're like, "Gosh darn it, I just went to the bathroom," And then, like you said, they did exactly what you did. They're pounding water, they're doing what they can. So yeah, and that shy bladder does happen. We've had. They have guidelines they have to follow too. It's not like they're just like, oh, Marcus can't go to the bathroom. That's a positive test.
Right.
They got to feed you more water. There's X amount they can give you. And they got to test it and they got to do their job. And not to get off topic, I've been that guy, and when you have, let's say somebody's on a return to duty process where it's got to be an observed test. I've been that guy I've been the observer. So it's, there's that side of it too.
Yeah, it's not all butterflies and rainbows here in the Clearinghouse, all right? But we told you we were going to take you through it from soup to nuts today, and I think we just accomplished all of that for sure.
That's for sure.
Jesse Keebler, man, thank you so much. This has been so informative, and I think it's a good idea that we just every year or so refresh this whole thing, let drivers know, and and hopefully answer some questions. And I know if they've got questions, they can come to you, right? Or somebody there within the department that can help them clear this stuff up, correct?
Yep, correct, yes.
All right, so there you go. Use your resources, drivers. And again, if you're questioning it, just don't. All right, Jesse, thank you so much, man. And because I know your son is a Duck fan, tell him go Ducks and console him a little bit, all right? Be good to him this week. For those of you that don't know, we record these a little bit in advance, and the Oregon Ducks just got pounded by Indiana a few days ago. I was fortunate enough to meet Jesse's son back at the Jamboree. He's a big Duck fan. I'm sure he's probably he's got his lip sagging a little bit around the house right now.
Yeah, it's all right. He'll move on. He's it's next season. You guys are in the recruiting cycle now, the NIL stuff, so it's always interesting.
He might move on, but I never will be able to, Jesse. It's been a pleasure today, man.
Yep.
We'll talk to you again next time, okay?
Thank you. Have a good day.
Great stuff there from Jesse Keebler. Every time we talk to Jesse, I feel like I get more educated on some part of the industry that I didn't know much about. I definitely have the experience when it comes to cannabis. I don't have the experience when it comes to the Clearinghouse. So big thanks to Jesse Keebler for coming on here and walking us through from soup to nuts, as we said. Very excited about this part of the show here because I kind of teased you guys in the open and told you I've got an exciting guest and I'm not giving you anything else. Well, the time has come. I'm here with our exciting guest right now. Joining me on the show is a new employee of Bulldog Solutions, or Bulldog Works, which creates this podcast and is the company I work for. You guys saw me in my Bulldog jersey when I was out there at the Liquid Trucking Jamboree. You get the relationship between the companies now. Please welcome to the show our new host employed with Bulldog Works, Amanda Casey. Amanda, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Hey, where's your applause button? I know you got one. I've been listening to your podcast here. Yay! We need Crystal next.
Yep. Welcome in. So excited to have you here, mainly because, if I can be so self-indulgent, I'm the only one in the world with my job until today, and now there's two of us. So welcome aboard. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. This is what the water cooler is going to look like for you and I. We'll hop on here and talk shop or what have you. But yeah, thank you. I'm thrilled to be a part of Bulldog. Very excited to be on the Liquid Trucking podcast. It's weird. I know you and I have talked a little bit, but it's funny how you feel like you know people when you listen to them, either on a podcast or on a radio station or whatever. And I've been listening to you for a few weeks. So like, I feel like I know way more about you. I have the game advantage here.
Good. Well, it's funny, doing this job, there's one poor person that's also been on this journey with me. That's my audio ninja, Mike. He will also be probably working with you quite a bit here in the future. And that poor man has listened to so many hours of my voice. This is episode 112, and we average about an hour for every episode. That means that Mike's gone through, and he's the editor, so he doesn't just listen to things once. He listens to them maybe tens, hundreds of times until he gets it right. The poor guy, Mike, I know you're listening because it's your job and you are forced to. Big ups to you, dude. and welcome to the next...
You and your wife are at a water cooler talking about how much they got to listen to you talk.
Exactly. Those two poor souls. So let's talk a little bit about what brought you here, because, my history is all over the place, but I did do 10 years terrestrial radio, and that's where the broadcasting love came from. When this job came open, I fought tooth and nail. They couldn't even hire me at first because my state is so messed up when it comes to taxes. But Dad always told me the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so I didn't stop bugging them until they found an accountant that could figure it out, Amanda. That's how bad I wanted to be here, and I know that a lot of other broadcasters feel the same. You got to get me in the seat. Talk to me a little bit about your history and why you wanted to come on board with Bulldog.
So I'm not going to lie, I'm like a weirdo. I'm at that age where I hate change. I've pretty much done terrestrial radio the majority of my career. like, I don't even want to say how many years, like 25 years. I know I look like a baby. You stay a little chubby, those wrinkles don't set in. There's your first tip. But yeah, straight out of high school. I mean, I'm based out of just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and I moved out this way like my senior year of high school. And at the end of the school year, there was like an announcement on the PA system that a local station was looking for interns. I picked it up at 17, and that's, what I did for a very long time. Most recently, I kind of got to like my dream station, classic rock station in my hometown, top 100 market, number one station, number one show. Just kind of like checked all those career wish boxes. And I have so much work left. I have so much like work life left, so podcast, everybody kept saying the word podcast, you should go do a podcast. And it took like the description of this job and this particular podcast to kind of really pique my interest and take it seriously. The odds of having two kind of like personal interests tied together is so odd for me. But if I can dive into that a little bit, as far as radio goes, I was saying about how people feel like they probably know you. I feel like I know you a little bit from listening. And that's the way that it is when you start somebody's day every single day. They're going to feel like they know you. And a huge part of my listenership at this classic rock station were local drivers or people that would hang on to us, until they lost the signal. And then you got the diehards that would take us with you with the app. And you just really kind of become a part of their life to the point that I'm getting like Christmas cards and Christmas gifts from these guys. I'm getting pictures on the text line of a flatbed with like a 1 cubic foot load on the back. Like, can you believe this is what I have today? Just, really random things. But also, oh my God, did we have the most accurate traffic reports on the planet?
Sure.
Because those drivers are on it.
Up to the minute type stuff there.
Yeah.
I love that. That's one thing I feel like we suffer from a little bit here on the show is the recentness of the recordings. We have to record everything so far in advance to make sure that, we can get all of the promotional material finished. We can get it through approval because I run my mouth sometimes and shouldn't have said those things. So it's probably a good thing that this isn't live, but it's that type of on up to the minute reporting that you can get from a truck driver as far as the traffic. Like, I have long thought on the morning news, KTLA, whatever the case is, I don't want to see a helicopter. That guy's way up in the air, removed from traffic. You get me on the ground with somebody with 18 wheels and let him give me, not only will I get a better report out of it, it'll be way more entertaining.
Oh, yeah. And besides a helicopter, you can't do the arm pump thing. Like, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? So, yeah, the other side of that, too, like, I think the reason that my truck driving listeners kind of attached to me is, I have that in my family. My stepdad, and from this point forward, we'll just refer to him as Pop because that's what he is, was a driver, 20 years with the CDLA.
That's cool.
He was what's considered a over-the-road driver, so he wasn't doing more than a few states away, but Ohio, PA, Maryland, New York, Illinois, West Virginia, and Indiana, those were all his route space. But actually, when he first started dating my mom, he was listening to me on a station because he could catch me through, a significant part of the drive. But it was real interesting to suddenly see my mom having to figure out how to do things like prepare meals for just herself when Pop was on the road, or, you know what I mean? Trying to make sure that Pop is eating right. Cause man, do what I tell you to do, but you don't. So, and then, he would always be so hyper focused on getting back to my mom, and he just would not pay a whole lot of attention to himself. And so that kind of became like a central focus for our family, was trying to get Pop into a routine. Cause at that point when he married my mom, he was early 50s. So, it was just really trying to make sure that he was doing what he could to take care of himself physically. Mm-hmm. He ended up retiring early, and now he came out of retirement and he's driving a school bus. And I can't even imagine the difference from hauling freight to hauling kids. And he's not always been the most amazingly patient with the little ones in our family. So I don't know how that's going, but yeah. So, I have the personal ties with the family to the industry, and You take any economics class and you're going to learn about this industry and how important it is to making this country work. So
100%, 100%. And I will tell you this from my experience with bus drivers, a lot of athletics as a kid. We did have one curmudgeonly kind of bus driver, but I'll tell you, once he warmed up to it's just having him get that first couple of yells out. So you always wanted to put the bad kids up front, right? Because he'll get those yells out, he'll straighten up the bad kids, and then it's actually a fun ride. He might tell some jokes, we might share some laughs, but getting that initial frustration out, I think, is key to that bus driver being able to smooth things out. And I did want to tell you too, you said you didn't want to mention how long you've been in terrestrial radio, 25 yeyears. I want to tell everybody that doesn't know this how big of an accomplishment that is. Oh. I've got so many friends in radio that have, there's two different kinds. There's kinds like me who get chewed up and spit out within about a decade and don't ever get back in. And there's people like you who actually maintain it and can stick with it. And normally they're 25-year plus people. I know 3 of them right off the top of my head, not only the same job, but the same station and the same show for 25 plus years.
Huge.
And I just think it's very commendable that you were able to keep it going, because I know way more of me than I know of you. And hats off to you for a just what I would call a storied career in radio. Anybody that can spend that long in it has got to have something for it. And so that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to get you on board with us, because I know you've got the broadcasting chops. Otherwise, you would have been lawnmowered just like me and all my buddies were right after we turned in a #1 book. So, that's how radio goes. It's a very brutal industry, and that's why you see a lot of former radio professionals shifting over to podcasting. It's not so siloed in big corporate money that they're just every now and then cutting 35% of the staff just because. Like, we're not that big. We don't have that many people. If we cut 35% of the staff, you're going to have to take an appendage from me because if I'm not one of the unlucky few that leaves, only part of me can stick around. I'll put it that way. So congratulations on that. And we're so happy to have you aboard here with all your experience in both broadcasting and truck driving.
Well, thank you. So we'll set the bar high. The last person that I interviewed was Gene Simmons from KISS.
Wow.
So I imagine on the not being creepy scale, y'all will beat him pretty easily, but
well,
definitely different
for sure.
Type of interview, I'm sure.
Yeah, by comparison, my last interview was Jesse Keebler, and you guys just heard it. So, and actually, Amanda was a fly on the wall for that one. She was there. We just didn't have her mic on. We didn't want to kind of drop it in Jesse's lap. We wanted to get the introduction out of the way, then take care of it. So
very interesting though. Like, I feel like I learned about a whole side of the industry that I didn't know about. Like SAPs, I had no idea about that. And I mean, just really eye-opening. And then having to think about all the different scenarios and lifestyles that exist in the world than existing in a truck. So just kind of a really crazy, interesting thing to learn about. And plus, with all the changes that keep coming, or the changes being requested, or the difference from one state to another, like primo topic for you guys to hit. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And what's been surprising to me is the response that we've always gotten to these episodes. I mean, still, the very first one we did on marijuana legislation and trucking is our most listened to episode. And I really think it's because this information, while it's out there, has not been distilled down for anybody. When you get a piece of paper that tells you everything you need to know, it's just a mess of legalese, and it's really hard to digest it, to be honest with you. I think at least I learned better hearing a couple dudes chat about it and just have a conversation, and that's what we get to do here, which is really cool. And Jesse always comes so well prepared too. Like, that guy, just a wealth of information and can answer any question that we have. So I hope the drivers get out of this what they're looking for, because really the point of that was just to give as much information as possible, because these are career-changing choices that you have to make out there every day. And, same thing if you're a pilot, same thing if you're a fireman. Like, there's certain positions out there that just are always going to be this way. And it's like Jesse and I said towards the end of that interview, even if this does get rescheduled, even if it actually happens this time and it's not another smoke and mirrors trick, I don't see it changing for drivers. I don't think drivers are going to get to be rolling down the street smoking endo, sipping on gin and juice anytime soon.
That was already in my head, so that was so weird that came out of your mouth. That's so funny. No, I mean, it's true, and you guys brought up a good point that it's like, the way that you test for that, it's going to show over a period of time. So, how do we know when you pop positive that it was from vacation 2 weeks ago or before you got in your truck to drive?
Exactly.
So, I don't want to see my surgeon passing the Dutchie before, coming in and opening me up. So
exactly. After he retires, I'll smoke with him all day out on the porch. But
right.
I don't need any shaky hands in the operating studio. So I've got some.
He leaves you open to go get a snack.
Yeah, exactly. I have a friend who calls his urologist that gave him his vasectomy Dr. Shaky Fingers, and that to me, like that one story that he told has just terrified me. I want a surgeon to be. Like, if you don't look like you're trying to sell me the highest value Wall Street stock, I'm worried, okay? I want professionalism. I don't know. My dad and mom have this shoulder surgeon called Dr. Chop, and he's like really, like, he jokes with them, and he's really kind of like, walk in the room, and he'll kind of slap you in the face with a little bit of an insult, and I think, like, I like that guy, but I think I'd rather have a beer with that guy. He did a real good job on my dad's shoulder. I'll give him that. But he's about to retire, and it's like, yeah, that's a beer doctor. I don't know that's my shoulder doctor, but he did good. So far, so good. Dad's shoulder's coming along well, so he'll be doing the arm pump in no time. But listen, I've got some kind of off-the-wall fun questions here for you.
Let's go.
I just want to learn a little bit more about your personality. Maybe the corners of it that don't get exposed here when we're on the podcast. So,
oh my God, Marcus, it's our first podcast together and you're exposing my corners. I cannot believe this is happening.
Welcome to the Liquid Trucking Podcast. I get down in here. You know what? This is a fun one. A while back, we let the drivers roast me. I basically picked out, I think, 5 or 6 of them on the teenage hotline. I sent them 3 paragraphs of the most embarrassing things I could think about myself. And they came back and roasted me. And one of the other things that they did on that show was they bestowed upon me a CB handle. Now, as you know, with your experience in trucking, your CB handle isn't something you just come up with because you think you know all of your little quirks. A CB handle is typically bestowed upon you by somebody else after you've done something. That something could be great. That something could be the worst mistake you've ever made, or somewhere in between. My CB handle is never shuts up. Right down the middle. Right down the middle. So I'm wondering if you were so lucky to be able to bestow upon yourself your own CB handle, what would you pick?
So I do kind of have a nickname that was given to me because I will tell you, like, I'm a full-grown adult, like 3-bedroom house, 3 adult children that already moved out, have grandchild. Like, I'm a grown up, but I still have a tendency to like climb on things and jump off of them. And, like I'm a stickler for big rules, but little rules I break all the time. I'm just like that. I'm just silly. You know what I mean? If it doesn't cause any harm, I'm all about having some fun. And so actually the owner of the last company that I worked for started referring to me in the office, to other people, not to me, as the wild child.
Okay.
So, and then there's, I don't know if you're familiar with the band, the Black Keys.
Yes.
I went to high school with those guys, and they have a song called Wild Child that I feel like if I ever had like a walk-up song for baseball, or more my taste, like wrestling, I'm a huge wrestling fan. So if I had like a walk-up song for wrestling, it would be Wild Child. So I think it would be appropriate for my CB to be the same.
I think that you get a bonus for a good CB handle if it sounds like it could also be a professional wrestler. And the Wild Child sounds like absolutely you're standing on some ropes. You're coming off the top turnbuckle.
Oh, yeah. DDT all day. That's me.
Awesome.
Yeah, torture rack, whatever. We're doing it.
Okay, so the Wild Child. Now, again, I will tell you, the drivers, as you are on this show with me and they get to know you, they're probably going to come at you with their own. But for now, Wild Child is a great start. I love it. Something you may have heard, I know you've been listening to a lot of episodes. This is something that's a little bit more recent, maybe going back to the last year and change. I have selected a hill to die on. And that hill...
Is it Meatloaf?
It is Meatloaf. You are exactly right.
Yay!
And I'll tell you, I did not expect the backlash that I got from choosing the meatloaf hill to die on. I figured if you're going to die on a hill, meatloaf might be one where you're kind of just, among friends. Like, I didn't think it would be me and only me, but I've received communication from my mother about this. I've gotten texts from drivers in the middle of the night telling me, hey, I just had this amazing meatloaf and sending me pictures of it. I've had drivers talk to me about, like, trying to convince me, like, maybe if you did it this way, you'd actually like it. No, I'm dying on this hill. So, Amanda, I ask you, what is the pettiest hill that you would die on, given the chance?
I don't know. I thought I was about to comment on meatloaf. I'd have to
You
really
can definitely
think about
share
that.
your thoughts on meatloaf if you want to.
Meatloaf is like a source of contention between me and my mother because my mom is a phenomenal cook, right? And there were 4 of us in the household growing up, 4 kids. So, having to make meals every day for a family of 6, that's not an easy task, but wonderful cook. 2 things you cannot insult of hers are her sauce for pasta, Italian sauce. I'm not a fan of it. She knows that. That's a source of contention. And the other is the meatloaf. I hate her meatloaf. I hated her meatloaf so much growing up that I literally refused to even try any other meatloaf because that's how much it turned me against it. And it's not like it's horrible, disgusting. There's probably, I don't know, too much onion or something in it. As a kid, you're more picky, but traumatized by her meatloaf. So I am with you on the meatloaf. I don't care what you do to it. I'm not going to eat it.
Okay, so there I am. I'm finally among friends on my meatloaf death hill. And yeah, my poor mother, she's actually quivering in her seat as we're saying this because I know she's listening and she's having flashbacks of my childhood as you talk about yours, thinking that there might be another family member that wants my meatloaf because as meatloaf goes, my meatloaf is delicious. My son, on the other hand, has decided that he hates everything about it and won't touch it. My mom, she was such a good sport because, there's my dad and I are kind of the picky eaters of the family and my sister a little bit as well. But she would, on a meatloaf night, Dad and I would look across the table at each other and be like, God, you remember the last time she made that thing we really like? And Dad would be like, what? I'm thinking, what is it? It's 2001. I guess it's probably been 94 was the last time we had that? And this is a running joke for my entire childhood. And it's like, as a young kid, it was just Dad riffing, just trying to get under Mom's skin a little bit, just trying to flicker a little guff. But as my dumbass started to come of age, I was like, well, I got to get in on this. This is all I like to do. And so it became and I'm sure at some point in time, my sister got in on it too. And so the moms out there that are listening to us talk about how we will never be meatloaf kids, we love you. We're sorry. We're dying on this hill.
Yes.
That's all there is to it. So I'm glad that I finally have a little company, to be honest with you, Amanda.
It's funny too, so on the opposite end of that spectrum now, being the mom, and my youngest is 19. It's my son, my only boy. And I remember one time he said something like, Mom, you only know how to make 5 things. And I was so offended by that because obviously I know how to make a lot of stuff and I'm not the best cook, but I'm a good cook, right?
Right.
But I'm like, honey, you and your 2 sisters and your dad only agree on 5 things.
Right.
So that's why I made those 5 things.
Yep.
Literally.
They get assigned a day of the week and
Yes.
you just deal with it, right?
Yep. We do Mexican Monday instead of Taco Tuesday, but
Perfect. That's great. Well, okay, I got one more for you. And this one is kind of fun, especially because we're sitting here talking about food. If Liquid Trucking were to kidnap you tomorrow, hand you a CDLA and say, on your way, Amanda, what's the one snack that you're taking and what's one completely impractical item that you have to take with you on your, let's call it a 4 to 6 week road trip?
Oh, well, we definitely need raw almonds. No, I'm totally kidding.
Thank God. Thank God. It's raw almonds and wheatgrass. Yeah, that sounds like a great road trip. Let's just
only
hop
in a shot,
on.
It makes you tough if you do your wheatgrass in a shot. No, I do get picked on because when I bring a lunch bag to anywhere, it's always just full of fruit. I eat so much fruit. And it's funny because now that I'm older, especially now that the kids are out of the house, I'm realizing I can do whatever I want. So I don't know that it's necessarily something I have to bring with me, but a big change I made is I never eat breakfast for breakfast anymore. So if I want dinner at 9 a.m., that's what I do. So I think my thing would just be like making sure I still eat how I want to, when I want to, because I can.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as the thing you have to bring with you, impractical, I don't know, but like I am such a music person, and something I do to start my day at home is I play an album. I play like an actual piece of vinyl on my record player. So that would be like my impractical thing. I'd be bringing like my whole stereo system and a little bit of my vinyl collection and stuffing it in the back of the truck. Yeah.
I have not, I've heard of plenty creative TV mounts, computers, laptops, all sorts of entertainment. I have not yet heard of a driver mounting a record player in the back, but I'm sure it's possible.
Oh, yeah. I'd be so popular, though. Come on. I just couldn't move and play music at the same time.
Exactly. One bad shift and all your vinyls cracked in a pile, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right. Well, listen, it's been awesome getting to know you here. I am excited to tell the drivers you're going to get to know Amanda a lot better in the coming weeks. She's going to be joining me here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, getting her feet wet. And what a great show that she gets to do that on. I'm so happy that we have this as kind of a platform available to bring you on and get you up to speed, because this is a fantastic group of people. They're going to fall in love with you. They won't take it easy on you, because that's how you know that they love you. It's trucking, right? It's tough love.
Listen,
and that's the best part about it. It's kind of like
I have brothers. I'm ready for that. And one of them is a Marine veteran. Like, if I can handle him.
Exactly. There you go.
He's a cop and a Marine veteran. Like,
oh, perfect. You're totally set up. These guys are going to be second nature for you. Mm-hmm. Well, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to throw my tagline out there. Because you've been listening to a lot of Liquid Trucking podcasts. Now, I'll give you a refresher if you need it, but I'll also let you go without it. Do you need the refresher?
I do.
You do? Okay. So I've been telling the guys every single episode since the very start to stay safe and keep the shiny side up. So wrap it up for us with your best Amanda radio personality and send us off for episode 113.
Okay, well, you guys are so important to me, and thank you for making all the things work that work, and stay safe and keep the shiny side up.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.
Interested in finding out more about what it takes to bring a podcast like the Liquid Trucking Podcast to your fleet? Bulldog provides tailor-made top-to-bottom podcast production services. We'll meet your terminal staff, connect with your drivers, and bring you the content you want your drivers to hear. Type bulldog.works into your browser to connect with us and learn more about what we can do for your fleet. That's bulldog.works for podcasts, tenacious recruiting, and more.